Hi, this is Kaya Wilkinson at Elevator World. I'd like to welcome Dr. Lee Gray, Professor of Architectural History in the School of Architecture and Senior Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Architecture at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Why are you currently visiting our offices this week?
Well, I'm delighted to be here this week. I am visiting the Elevator World Archive, and the purpose of my visit is doing research on my most recent book project, which is a history of escalators.
How long has this project been in the works?
This project has actually been in the works for several years, and this year I was finally able to return to it in earnest, and I'm looking forward to completing the manuscript of the book by June of next year, and hopefully late 2022, early 23. Hopefully the book will come out.
So maybe it will be ready in time to be a Christmas present for 2022?
That would be absolutely wonderful. It will be a great Christmas present.
Yes. How long have you held the roles you've held at the school as professor and associate dean?
So I've been with UNC Charlotte for, I think, 32 years, and I've been an associate dean for almost 20 years. And the current college, the College of Arts and Architecture, was established in 2008. And so I've held that role since then. And my academic home is the School of Architecture, and I'm a professor of architectural history.
When and how did you get into researching vertical transportation history?
That began in the spring of, this now seems a long time ago, the spring of 1982, when as a graduate student at the University of Virginia, I took a seminar in the history of building technology. And as a graduate student in a seminar, you have to write a research paper. And I had no idea what I was going to write my paper on. And I thought, for reasons I do not recall, I don't know anything about elevators. I'll write my paper on elevators. And in doing so, I realized that there was no clear history, a single document or history of elevators that existed. And then that turned into my master's thesis at the University of Virginia. And fast forward to my academic position at UNC Charlotte. And when you are a tenure track professor in history, one of the things you have to do is write a book. And I decided if I had to write a book, I was going to have the most fun I possibly could. And I decided to return to my elevator research. And that was well over 20 years ago. And I have not looked back since. And I am having as much fun today as I did in the early 80s when I began this adventure.
Wonderful. And just to clarify, that initial book was History of the Passenger Elevator in the 19th century, right?
That's correct. And Elevator World published the book, and you all were wonderful to work with. And I'm working with you on the history of escalators.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to reading that manuscript. Speaking of your work for Elevator World, you in 2012 had written more than 100 columns for us. What's the count now, approximately?
So the article that I just submitted, my monthly history article that I just submitted last week, was article number 218.
Oh, wow. Past the 200 mark. And that's a lot of columns. What are some of your favorites? All I Want for Christmas is a Meccano moving stairway comes to mind. Everyone loved that one. Was that one of your favorites? Can you think of any others that you particularly liked?
So, and I appreciate you mentioning the Meccano article. That was a lot of fun. Meccano was sort of, think of it as erector sets before erector sets came onto the market. And that was great fun because it allowed me to spend a ridiculous amount of money on eBay purchasing vintage Meccano sets so I could build my own toy escalator following the directions from 1911. And that was great fun, but it also was serious research in that the model was of two escalators placed side by side. And in 1911, that was a unique and new thing. So learning something from toys was great fun. As far as favorite articles, I enjoy them all. I think some of my most favorite are those that deal with the unique personalities that we find in the history of vertical transportation, where I've delved into specific inventors or industry leaders. Also, some of the unique installations that we find in the history of elevators and escalators in exhibition buildings or other unique settings. And really, in many, I always enjoy them because every single article I write, I learn something new. And in learning something new, as a good example is the article I just submitted looking at elevator brakes in the early 20th century. Mm-hmm. I'd actually not really looked at elevator brakes before in detail, and now I realize I have a whole new avenue of detailed research to delve into. And how I think of this is I'm very fortunate to be able to focus on one thing, one area of research rather, and the metaphor I use is every new thing I learn both shines a light forward on future research, but it also shines a light backwards and helps me understand what I've already investigated.
Very cool. Are there any current or future projects that you're working on right now or considering?
So I'm always thinking about future articles, and I was very fortunate this year to participate in the Lift and Escalator Symposium that is sponsored in England, and I was one of the keynote speakers, and my subject was a broad overview of 100 years of elevator safeties. And in doing that research, most of it was sort of going back over work I'd previously done. However, I did some limited amount of original research for that. And one of the things I realized in doing that was, because one of the things I highlighted was ironically, the first accident that occurred when a safety device was tested, which was actually 1857. And in investigating that, I realized that we know almost nothing about the testing of safety devices in the 19th century, how they would have been tested, how proof of concept was explored. And in fact, if we move through the 19th century into the early 20th century, when test towers begin to emerge, we don't know how they were used. We don't know how they were organized, how tests were conducted, the parameters that safety devices were tested. And this now is a whole other avenue of investigation for me in the future to look into how we pursued ensuring that the devices that were invented by various industries that we confirm their safety. And that, of course, research continues into the 21st century when we know all of this happens, but how do current safety tests and standards compare to what we used to do and what are their origins?
That is a very fascinating topic, and we're looking forward to reading your work on that. And I'm sure our readers can access all of Dr. Gray's previous columns at our website, and his previous book, and eventually his future book at elevatorbooks.com. Thank you, Dr. Gray.
All right. Thank you very much.